Oh, I just touched.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Once there was a reindeer named Rudolph who lived at the North Pole in Toyland. Rudolph was younger and smaller than all the other reindeer there. They all had proud, tall antlers. Rudolph's antlers were only tiny stubs. Worst of all, Rudolph had a big, bright red nose. It was so red that it glowed in the dark. Poor Rudolph. He wanted to be like the other reindeer in Toyland. Oh, to have a small brown nose instead of a big, bright red one. The other reindeer made fun of Rudolph, and they called him names. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, they teased over and over again until the tears glistened on Rudolph's large red nose. Sometimes the other reindeer circled around Rudolph, kicking up snowballs with their tiny hoofs and covering Rudolph with a blanket of white, fluffy snow. All of the reindeer loved to play games. They played tree tag and snow slide and tumble bones. But Rudolph was never asked to play. He stood behind a pine tree and watched. He was very lonely. Rudolph couldn't even play hide and seek with the rabbits. His glowing red nose gave him away every time. Before Christmas Eve, Santa's elves posted a sign on the gate to Toyland. Santa's team choosing time, the sign said. All the reindeer were asked to line up at 8 o'clock in the meadow. Santa Claus was coming to choose the team that would help deliver presents to every good boy and girl in the world. The reindeer danced with excitement when they heard the news. They pranced and tossed their antlers and pawed the snowy ground with their hooves. Each reindeer hoped he would be chosen to guide Santa's sleigh. It was the greatest honor a reindeer could have. Rudolph sighed. He was ashamed to have Santa see his bright red nose, so he decided to hide. At 8 o'clock, when all the other reindeer had gone to the meadow, Rudolph hid behind a holly hedge. His bright red nose blended in with the bright red berries, and the thick growth of leaves concealed the rest of him. No one would find him there. Down in the meadow, all of the hopeful reindeer stood in a line waiting to be inspected by Santa himself. Santa had to choose carefully. Only the fastest, strongest, and best reindeer would do. I think Dasher will be fine. He's the biggest reindeer, said Santa. Dasher, wrote his elf assistant in a big book. And Dancer is the strongest, said Santa, pulling his beard. Dancer, wrote the elf. Ho, ho. Let's see, continued Santa. Hi, Seymour. Here's Prancer and here's Vixen. They make the smoothest landing on rooftops. Comet is the fastest, Cupid is the most sure-footed, said Santa. I picked them. And last I choose Donner and Blitzen. They're the best at twisting over the treetops and skimming over the telephone poles. The reindeer and Santa's team were very happy. They rubbed noses. They danced and clinked their antlers together. Even the reindeer who weren't chosen were given good jobs. One got to try out electric trains and another cuddled Christmas kittens. The only reindeer without a job was Rudolph. He wanted to be helped, but he knew we would laugh at. So he stayed hidden behind the holly hedge. At last it was Christmas Eve, like it is tonight. Santa's elves were busy packing the sleigh. In fact, everyone was busy except Rudolph. Finally, he could stand it no longer. I want to help too. I don't care if they make fun of me. He dashed from his hiding place behind the hedge and went to find Santa. There must be something I can do to help. The night was bitter cold and a terrible fog covered all the earth. Santa's elves kept bumping into each other as they hitched up the team. They could hardly see as they put on each bright red harness and tied the jingle bells. To make matters worse, Dasher and Dancer were fighting over who would be lead reindeer. I was chosen first, said Dasher. But you always trip over the moon, said Dancer. Santa was worried. We'll never get there if you two don't stop quarreling. And where's my Christmas list? I can't see a thing in this fog. Just then a soft red glow lit up the snow. Thank goodness, said Santa. I found my list. Ho, ho. I must have tucked it into my belt. Who brought this fine lantern? Asked Santa. I must take it with me. I can see perfectly now. It's not a lantern, said Rudolph, trembling. The light comes from my nose. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, said Santa. I'm certainly glad to see you. Your light will glide my sleigh tonight. I appreciate all the work and appoint you the head of my team, #1 reindeer in all the world. Rudolph was very proud. Now he realized how special he was, and he would never again feel ashamed of his glowing nose. Rudolph held his head high. Proudly he pranced to the front of the team. All the other reindeer bowed. Donner and Dancer helped Rudolph put on his harness, and Cupid gave him a beautiful sprig of holly berries. Then, down, down through the clouds and over the sleeping houses, Santa and his team flew on that foggy Christmas Eve, and leading the whole procession was Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. So if you see a soft glow in the sky on Christmas Eve, you can be sure that Rudolph, the most famous reindeer of all, is very near. Good night, baby. I love you. Merry Christmas.